How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the channel. We're going to be checking out why Belgium is so divided, the Dutch and French culture split. Now, this video, I seen it pop up and I thought it looked familiar. I thought that I had reacted to it before, but I don't believe I did. I searched all over my channel, did not find it. And Geography by Geoff, I've seen the channel before. I don't know if I've reacted to the channel. I believe I have. I may have just watched it in my off time. But anyways, we're going to find out why Belgium is so divided.
Europe is home to almost 50 independent countries. And while each one has a complicated history that's been made up of many smaller states before it, Belgium is perhaps the only European country today that is actually kind of two equally large countries. Here's why Belgium is so divided by language.
It kind of is, actually.
Hello and welcome to Geography by Jeff. Today we're off to Europe. More specifically, we are going to dive pretty deep into the small northwest country, Belgium. Now, if you're completely unfamiliar with Europe, you should know that every country in Europe has kind of a messy history. And today's video on Belgium is not intended to take a specific side in the never-ending debate on Belgium's future. We're just exploring why it's so divided. But before we get to today's episode, as usual, be sure to check out my podcast, Geography is Everything with Professor Hunter Shobi. If you're a fan of geography, this is literally the podcast for you. This week, we are finishing off our two-part series on the potato.
Go check out his podcast. So I think a lot of it, part of it is the 80 Years' War. And I believe because I think like Spain took over part of the Netherlands, because Netherlands used to own like a lot of Belgium. It was combined or something, right? And I believe that the Spaniards took control over like part of it, and then it got liberated by the French or something, and then like they didn't want to rejoin with the rest of the Netherlands. I can't remember. It's been a while since I've covered anything like this, since I've watched any of these videos about Belgium. But yeah, we're gonna check it out.
Like all European countries, Belgium has a complicated history that's way too long for this video. So we're going to skip a bunch of it and jump right to the early 1800s, when much of the modern day Belgium we know has its foundation. But take note here that a lot occurred beforehand that influenced everything we're talking about in this video. Yeah. We're just not able to cover it all. The Belgium...
Okay, so the early 1800s, that's far past what I was thinking, because that would have been during the 1600s, I believe, the 80 Years' War.
We know today was really the result of one big event: the collapse of the French First Republic and the subsequent reunification of the lowland countries into the United Kingdom of the Netherlands. Prior to this moment, the entire lowlands region was under control by various European powers such as France, Spain, Austria, and even the Roman Empire, all the way back when Julius Caesar first conquered the area. But with the United Kingdom of the Netherlands, the southern portion of the country, primarily Flanders and Wallonia today, began to form their own national and combined identity. You see, the United Kingdom of the Netherlands was ruled by William I, and William was from The Hague in the northern region of the country. This meant that William was also part of the Dutch Reformed Church, a Protestant church, not a Catholic one. And the southern regions of Flanders and Wallonia were still predominantly Catholic. This sparked the initial and notable difference between the North and the South, along with not being of the same religion, which was a...
And what he was saying, there's a lot of history that happened way, way, way before this time period that led up to it. And part of what I'm thinking that he's talking about and referring to is how this bottom part's Catholic. I think this is left over from the 80 Years' War, from Spain's influence and stuff. So then that shaped their religious beliefs and viewpoints and whatnot, and then fast forward led up to what's going on now in the early 1800s that we're covering or finding out about, right?
North and the South. Along with not being of the same religion, which was a huge deal back then, the country was not divided up fairly. For example, the Belgian regions of the country were underrepresented in the General Assembly, and because of this and William I's preferred capital location, the majority of institutions were based in the north. This meant services were not spread equally. But at the same time, the public debts of the north, approximately 10 times the size of the south's debts, had to be paid back by those living in the southern region. This obviously wasn't thought of as fair by the South. And from there, things just got worse. In 1823, a reform was passed to make Dutch the official language in the South. This reform was met with strong opposition from the upper classes who, at the time, were mostly French-speaking. Those in Flanders and Wallonia greatly disliked this reform. Wallonia for the obvious reason that they spoke French, but Flanders spoke its own dialect of Dutch that was going to be disallowed as well. Basically, everyone in the South was incensed by this. In June 1830, the reform was retracted, but by then it was far too late. In August of 1830, riots broke out in Brussels, which the Dutch weren't able to quell, mostly because their southern troops deserted en masse. Unable to stop the uprising, the European powers of Austria, Britain, France, Russia, and Prussia came together in London, where, at the end of it, they ultimately supported and guaranteed the right for an independent Belgium to exist.
So Prussia, that's what is modern day Germany, right? I believe.
And guaranteed the right for an independent Belgium to exist. The Netherlands, of course, would not accept this agreement initially, but would ultimately recognize Belgium in 1839. Since then, Belgium has been a single, unified country, kind of. Today, Belgium is not only an independent country, but is also the primary home of the European Union. This is interesting because the European Union is fundamentally about bringing the disparate European countries under a single umbrella. But Belgium itself has some serious issues around unity. But before we get into why Belgium is divided in half, if you're enjoying this video, hit that subscribe button. More fun geography videos are just a click away.
It's just interesting to me that you would have,
as it turns out,
like, it's just interesting that it's almost like an artificial line, and it's like, okay, if you're on that side you speak Dutch, if you're on this side you speak French. But I mean, it's not really like that, because obviously in Brussels they speak French, but that's in the Flanders region. It's like a Wallonia outpost or something.
Language is a huge part of any sort of national identity. The French speak French, the Germans speak German, and the Japanese speak Japanese. But it's none of this is very surprising.
It's not like that, because languages, there's multiple countries that speak the same language. Like, we're in America here, I don't speak American, I speak English. That is, Scotland, they speak English. Ireland, they speak English, mostly. But, yeah.
Even the United States, which has no official language, is still dominated by the English language. But Belgium is not like this at all. In fact, the country is almost equally divided in half by two dominant languages, Dutch and French. And to complicate
a little tiny bit of German over there on the side.
Matters even further, some Belgians in the east speak German. So really, the country has three languages, two of which are constantly vying for dominant control of the country. And to be fair to all parties involved, really each region is speaking specific dialects of the primary language. Flemish, for example, is not exactly like Dutch. But while language has led the divide between the country, as it turns out, it kind of boils along industry and economy too. In the 19th century, the French reigned as the only official language in the country due to it being spoken by the wealthy, coal-rich South. This meant that the southern region of Wallonia had more power and say in national politics and culture. But in the 20th century, the situation was reversed. Coal mines in Wallonia were depleted and created a lot of poverty, while a commercial boom in the Dutch-speaking north empowered Flemish pride and linguistic assertiveness. In this way, language was merely the vessel by which nationalistic pride flowed through. These tensions were further exacerbated by the German occupation of Belgium in both world wars, as the Germans employed a divide and rule strategy wherein they promoted the linguistic divide. All of this today has combined to create an interesting situation within Belgium, where some are proposing a formal partition.
Okay, so that's interesting that they're almost like pitted against each other, like during the world wars and stuff, so it's like, if the world wars didn't happen, maybe they would have been able to mesh well together, but like, it seems like they got more divided or something, right? The hypothetical partition.
In 2007, Belgium faced an interesting problem. The country could not get a coalition to form a government that would effectively lead the country for 196 days. Because of this, there were renewed calls for a partition of the country of Belgium that has lasted well into today, though notably it's mostly made by far-right parties. Regardless, the hypothetical partition of Belgium is something that is legitimately discussed from time to time. Basically, it boils down to partitioning the country based on linguistic lines. There have been calls.
But what happens to Brussels? Because Brussels speaks mainly French. Does that become like an outpost of Wallonia?
Calls for Flanders and Wallonia being made into fully independent countries, despite the fact that both regions receive a fair amount of autonomy today. There have even been calls for Flanders and Wallonia to join the Netherlands and France respectively, though these calls are never taken too seriously. But this kind of partition leaves out two very important things: Brussels and the Eastern German-speaking communities. Brussels...
I forgot about the German, sorry guys. Yeah, I mentioned the Brussels, like what about Brussels? I forgot about the German-speaking communities. I apologize.
The capital of Belgium currently exists within Flanders, but as its own separate region. In fact, most people speak French within Brussels today, despite it being surrounded by a Dutch-speaking region, which leaves the city in an interesting situation under a hypothetical partition. Does it join with Flanders, where it would be linguistically in the minority? Does it join Wallonia as an exclave where it would be entirely surrounded by the country
Exclave. That's what I was thinking of, not outpost. Exclave.
of Flanders? Or does it become an independent city-state as some suggest? And as for the German-speaking communities in the east, well, it seems no one thinks about them much at all, given.
Now, if Brussels became an independent city-state, now that's an interesting thought because Brussels is the capital of like the European Union and stuff, right? So like that would almost kind of make sense, I think, right?
In their linguistic minority status within Belgium, it seems most who openly speak about partitioning Belgium assume that it would be absorbed into Wallonia, where it would continue to be a minority province, or it would be absorbed into either Germany or Luxembourg. Regardless, it seems that few ever consult with this region when discussing future plans for a partitioned Belgium. All that's to say, it seems like all this talk of partitioning Belgium is for nothing. Recent polls have found time and again that most Belgians in all regions favor sticking it out together rather than undergoing any formal split.
Well, I think a lot of it too is because the identity of being a Belgian, you know, it would be kind of stripped away if Flanders joined the Netherlands, Wallonia joined France. You wouldn't have that sense of pride as much. Like, I mean, you would, sure, but it wouldn't be the same as being like, yeah, I'm Flemish, or yeah, I'm Wallonia or whatever, you know. It'd be overridden by, oh, I'm Dutch or I'm French, and they kind of like being different. I think they carved out their identity by being different, you know, and of course the Dutch and the Flemish, they give each other shit all the time. They pick on each other, and I'm assuming France and Wallonia is the same way, I would assume.
Today, Belgium is home to approximately 11.5 million people, and of those 11.5 million, about 59% speak Dutch as their primary language, 40% speak French, and 1% speak German. But Belgium, perhaps more than most other European countries, is a true polyglot nation. Many Belgians today speak both Dutch and French, as well as some combination of English, German, Spanish, and other dominant European languages. Yeah. And while the country does appear able to weather the constant discussion of partitioning, its political situation is still rather shaky. In the 2019 election, far-right Flemish nationalist parties gained many seats in parliament. Meanwhile, the French-speaking Wallonian parties that gained seats were heavily on the socialist side of the spectrum.
Does this mean they're just trying to they're trying to divide some more?
Political divide has been exacerbating linguistic tensions in the country once again. Where might it all lead? Only the Belgians can say. Europe in general is a hodgepodge of cultures and languages overlapping each other constantly. But Belgium is a fascinating country above and beyond. It both proves that a country can exist with competing cultures and languages, while also proving that doing so will undoubtedly lead to tensions. If nothing else, it's a fascinating case study in nation building. I hope you enjoyed learning more about.
What do you guys think about it? Do you want to be like independent as your own, you know, or do you want to join France or the Netherlands or Germany? Do you live in the German-speaking region? And actually, what's your thoughts on that? Do you guys get tired of being forgot about? I'm sure you do. But anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a super fun, awesome day. Take care, bye.